Hi, everyone. So, I'm not sure if Sanele forwarded it also to the others, um, but I forwarded it now to Fungi Sai and to Dr. There's Dr. Antoinette. Hi, Antoinette. Hi, Guguletu. So sorry about this, but maybe this is going to be easier, colleagues. I'm just giving a moment or two for our other people to also join. We are just sending it on to everyone who are joined to see whether. So, Guguletu, I'll tell you just now when you can start. Apologies, colleagues. Mm. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, David. Thanks, Prof, for joining us. We seem to be having issues with the Twitter space that kicked us out. So I'm just going to give it another minute or two for us to dial our one other speaker, Alana, in, and then we will continue. I'm going to ask that we then first continue with Guguletu, if you don't mind, since she started in the Twitter space, and then you can follow her. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I see that we have a few of our colleagues that have joined. We are still trying to dial Alana in. And I think we can continue for now. Guguletu, I apologize for the interruption. So over to you. And maybe if you can start over with your presentation, that will be great for those of us who missed your first few minutes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so what I was saying is that yes, there's been progress over the years when you look at maybe what was happening in the colonial era under apartheid, and when you look at educational policies in terms of languages, you can see there's been a very big difference there. But then the issue that remains on the ground is that there hasn't been much progress when it comes to aligning the policies that have been implemented in terms of language policies and what is actually happening on the ground. When you look at most universities, I'll speak mainly basing my argument on what is happening in Stellenbosch because that's what I know most. So when you look at Stellenbosch University, yes, we have a language policy that speaks of multilingualism, that speaks of it being a university where the main mediums of instruction, it's Afrikaans, English, and isiXhosa. But when you look at what is happening on the ground, it's mainly English that is being utilized. So this might seem okay for those who come from an English speaking background, but it doesn't apply the same for a person who might have been brought up in an environment where English was not the main mode of instruction in high school or at home, or maybe they were using Afrikaans and other languages such as Zulu and isiXhosa. So English sometimes, to some extent, poses a barrier to students. Some students fail not because they do not know what they're doing, but mainly because sometimes they might not understand what the lecturer is saying, or might not understand fully, might not have a strong command of the language that is being used. So at the end of the day, they end up failing. And we are saying that policies are there, but they don't push much to accommodate for students who might fall short. So for instance, when you look at Africans, I think they try to provide notes in classes, but the same doesn't apply for isiXhosa. You will have to go and look for the notes yourself. So all I'm saying is that yes, policies are good, but they also fall short. And the other issue that students have also found difficult, it's how the workspace itself does not accommodate for other languages. So it's something that happens and we all sort of like overlook it, but it's the reality that is on the ground to say that when you want to be employed, especially in the private sector, you might need to have a strong command of the English language, of Afrikaans, because most of those other languages are not accommodated for. So it's, the interest, students might want to engage more in their mother tongue or in their mother languages. But the fact that it's not accommodated for within the workspace doesn't encourage that environment of saying we want to include all languages. So all I'm saying is that, yes, universities can be the driving force for a more accommodative environment where all languages are appreciated. But universities alone, together with government policies alone, cannot achieve a multi-linguistic society. All I'm saying is that we will need all actors within maybe the workspace, within the home and everyone else to actually participate in creating an environment where all languages are appreciated. So the main challenges that we also face as students is that now when you look at the private sector and you can tell that your mother tongue or your mother language will not help you in that sector, it becomes difficult for you to appreciate your mother language. It becomes difficult for you to engage with your mother tongue. Everyone now wants to learn in English because you can only get so much opportunities when you understand the language, when you are good at that language. So I think, yes, policies are important, but then it will be sort of like ignorant to expect universities alone to push and drive for, the inclusion of all languages if the other actors outside the university, if the other actors at home where students we are raised, we are not being encouraged to use our mother tongue because the opportunities are only available if you have mastered a particular language. So yes, as South Africa, I think South Africa has pushed much for the accommodation of, vernacular languages as compared to other countries. I think, yes, there the government is doing a good job, but then there are still particular barriers where we are saying, as students, we also need help. We also need to be accommodated. There must be reasonable accommodation of those other languages within spaces outside the university, because opportunities are still mainly available for those who are English speaking. And English, in as much as we might not want to admit this, has become and continues to become the measure of intelligence, the measure of opportunities, or how far you can go in this life. So yes, we have moved, there have been changes, but the exclusionary nature of languages has also evolved, and it makes it difficult for students to actually do whatever they like or to pursue their studies in an environment that allows them to do so, because at the end of the day, to some extent, we are forced to sort of like appreciate or mainly engage with a certain language because we are looking out for our future. We are looking out for opportunities at the end of the day. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Guguletu, for that perspective, which I think is very valid, because it is important to know, okay, this is what is happening on the ground, and these are the gaps. So I hear that you're saying that we need solutions for the students who fall short, not just inside of Stellenbosch University, but also in the workspace, and also in relation to other actors outside of SU, that we can't just expect changes within the university, but there needs to be a broader change. Also, in the same breath, you welcome and acknowledge that there has been changes, and there has been transformation, but we have not yet done enough. So I think what we could maybe do then later as well, when we discuss, as I said to Antoinette as well, to look at, in terms of the workshops, what are the things that we can focus on? What are your suggestions in terms of actions and solutions towards these gaps? And how can we then, have more inclusivity? I do hear you in terms of English that has taken a prominent place in terms of teaching and learning, but how do we then, what are the suggestions to solve this gap? So I'm going to now hand over to Professor David, for his input, and maybe he has got some suggestions for us in terms of how we can overcome these barriers.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, David.
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Is Prof. Tuli there?
Yes,
Well,
I am,
first
but
of all-
continue to chair for continuity.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Welcome, Prof. Lovely to
Thanks,
have you
Dad.
with us.
Thanks, Martha.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for their kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be part of this most interesting forum. I would like to start by making reference to a concept, the concept of language ecology. This is a concept in multilingual contexts such as South Africa or Spain. Yeah, a key concept. Yeah, Spain is my country of origin. Language ecology could be defined as the study of how languages interact with each other and with the surrounding social factors in a given context, and how their use and status can be preserved. In this way, ecology becomes a metaphor from biology that is used in language management and planning. Language ecology argues for the preservation of languages as an analogy of the preservation of biological species. As we are concerned about the extinction of, for example, the black rhino or the Cape vulture or the blue crane here in South Africa, we should also be concerned about the disappearance of a language spoken by other members of our community. We should widen our circle of compassion to embrace not only all living creatures, but also all living languages. The aim of language ecology is to pave the way to ecologically balanced multilingual education systems in which the local and the global languages can coexist and even strengthen each other. To reach such ecology, languages need to be supported by political, social, and academic institutions and remain solidly established on all the ranks of the educational ladder, when their position is not threatened by other coexisting languages. And the education system plays a key role on that score. Let me now focus on my context, Spain, the one that I obviously know better, which I believe can help to shed some light on multilingual education. I think it will be nice to add this external perspective, yeah? In Spain, after centuries of undergoing a diglossic situation, minority languages, Basque, Catalan, and Galician, were forbidden from public spaces during Franco's dictatorship. Only Spanish was allowed, the majority language. That is, between 1939 and 1975, minority languages could not be spoken in public spaces, and those who dared to use them could be punished. With the advent of democracy,
Sorry,
yes?
are we load-shedded?
No?
Prof, no, we're not load-shedded.
Why?
Sorry. We're talking to you. Prof,
Yes?
Yes, Prof?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
I
yes,
can
Prof.
hear you. I apologize profusely. I was asking somebody else.
Okay, thanks, Prof.
Could what I said so far be heard?
Yes, thank you, Prof. We're hearing you clear.
Okay, I will go on then. So, as I was saying, between 1939 and 75, minority languages could not be spoken in public spaces. Yeah, and when with the Spanish Constitution of 1978, minority languages were granted co-official status. Yeah, so in 1983, 5 years later, these minoritized languages started to be used as language of learning and teaching at the schools and universities. They started to be used as means of instruction to teach subjects such as history, philosophy, economics, or maths. This is called a transitional justice scenario. That is to say, when a society moves from a dictatorship to democracy. The objective is to make up for past abuses of human rights through the creation of the conditions for social and political stability in the future. And to achieve this goal, emphasis must be placed on education, identities, and culture. In multilingual contexts in which linguistic repression has been part of the broader political repressions, on many occasions, abuses of human rights are linked to abuses of language-based rights. That was the case in my home country, in Spain. However, repression boosted a strong sense of resistance and fostered a close tie between language and identity. In summary, the outcome of repression was just the opposite of what the fascist government expected to obtain. And against all odds, many citizens developed a very strong identity link with their abused languages. For example, in my home region, in the Basque Country, it's an officially bilingual community in Basque and Spanish. And nowadays, bilingual programs in both Basque and Spanish are much more popular than monolingual programs in Spanish. Initially, in 1983, parents decided to enroll their kids in monolingual programs, in Spanish medium programs. Yeah. Nowadays, this is the least popular option, and 84% of families have gone for bilingual education. So what's important here is that once minority languages were given an opportunity, the positive academic results helped to clear the way for bilingual educations, and parents were willing to enroll their children in bilingual programs. So, for example, at university level, in my home university, the University of the Basque Country, more than half of the students, 54% to be precise, studied their degrees in Basque. It's worth pointing out that all degrees are taught in Basque and Spanish, and 2/3 of our teaching staff are bilingual in both languages. In addition, in the last 20 years, the role of English as a lingua franca, as a global language, has increased. And this has also been reflected in our education system, in which schools and universities have included multilingualism in their curricula. That is, both Basque, Spanish, and English, the three languages, are present in the curriculum, and multilingualism has become the norm. Currently, more than 800 subjects are delivered in English at the University of the Basque Country. And in the case of obligatory subjects, there is usually one group in Spanish, one group in Basque, and one group in English. But as the saying goes, all that glitters is not gold. In Spain, there are obviously linguistic tensions. This is unavoidable in any multilingual context, and unfortunately, the linguistic Arcadia or Shangri-La simply does not exist. Linguistic tensions are to be found in all multilingual contexts, all over the world, but it is our responsibility to contribute to reducing and diffusing such tensions. That is why I have carried out much research on language attitudes, and it is important to unearth what the different stakeholders, teachers, students, lecturers, and the administration think about the use of the different languages in context. It's very important to give voice to everybody. Language attitudes need to be considered in the curriculum of multilingual contexts, and they have more often than not been neglected. This is a question that deserves much more attention in classes at the schools and lectures at the university level, because it will allow school teachers and university lecturers to confront and overcome prejudices and discrimination. Language conflict deserves a lot more attention than it gets today. It clearly needs to be more closely investigated because it will contribute to the neutralization and prevention of language conflict. This will ideally help to reach the language ecology to which I refer at the beginning of my speech. And I'm finishing. But for this to become a reality, schools and universities need to receive the necessary funding to be able to tackle the demands that the spread of multilingualism entails. It is at this stage when language policies come to the fore, as politicians' traditional lip service to multilingualism should go a step further and be crystallized by funding the education system adequately. Education is the linchpin of any society, which is why political commitment is a must. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that really informative explanation of your current situation in Spain and also the historical exclusion which is similar to what was experienced in South Africa. I think it's very definitely something that we need to discuss is looking at the different stakeholders and also funding and political will. In terms of how we then ensure that there is multilingualism at our higher education institutions. But what I did find very interesting as well, and which I think we can also explore a bit later, is also your advice on starting earlier in terms of multilingualism and diversity and understanding language attitudes. So this is something that, yes, we have to start with in preschool and then also maybe at our homes and within our communities, because this is the only way for us then in the end to understand how social attitudes then and like you said, surrounding social factors play a role in how we all perceive multilingualism, how we interpret it. So I'm going to then next hand over to Alana. Alana, welcome. Also to our Social Justice Café. Alana is AfriForum's Head of Cultural Affairs and also a board member of the Afrikaans Language Board, AfriForum, and Marula Media. Over to you, Alana.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to participate in this crucially important discussion. And I can say it's a hot topic on more grounds than one for me today, because we're in the middle of a heat wave here in Pretoria. So it's not only the topic that is hot at this moment. Although our South African national motto celebrates the diversity of residents of South Africa, I think too often the languages of our diverse communities are treated like an inconvenience, and the recognition of language rights as a kind of a luxury that we can't afford. And I think that's where we have to develop that multilingual mindset that you have already referred to. You will be aware that AfriForum has been involved in a lot of court cases pertaining to language rights, including the use of languages in educational facilities. And usually the first arguments proposed by the respondents in these cases have been the high cost of multilingual instruction. Factors which to date have never been considered, however, or included in these calculations have been how many learners or students have been denied access because of a total lack of opportunities to study in their mother language, and the role played by an absence of mother language education in the percentage of students who drop out of schools or tertiary education facilities, or who do not complete their studies in the minimum time available but take longer. International, like we've just learned from Professor David, authorities also grapple with this question of access in language. Language rights as a fundamental human right is still a fairly new concept, and the accommodation of minorities without causing detriment to the rest of the communities in a country is being addressed all over the world. So at least we're not alone in this. But this issue is also being complicated by factors like economic interests and large-scale international migration. The court cases regarding language rights that have taken place in South Africa have played a significant role in the development of legislation and the international debate about language and access, and language rights in particular. In the course of the 18 years that I've been involved in such cases, it's been encouraging to see a growing awareness amongst the judiciary about the importance of language rights and mother language education. But unfortunately, there are still many people in all sectors, even in the field of education, who are not aware of the importance of language rights and mother language education. And I think I agree with Gugulethu. Universities and schools can't be the institutions that are held solely responsible for making people aware. But I think that educational facilities can play an immense role in creating such awareness and in creating spaces where languages can prove their worth to the community outside, so that people like consumers and clients can also start asking to see their languages being represented in the business world and not only within educational facilities. I often come across people who stress that they are successful even despite the fact that they attended an English school, which was a second or third or even fifth language for many of them. And for some, I think this may be the case, especially the fortunate few who have access to excellent schools, to financial resources, and who have an aptitude for languages. But for many, and I almost want to risk stating that for the majority of the children in the country, this is not the case. The fact that the majority of South African children complete their school careers in second languages is one of the main reasons why we see such a high level of youth unemployment in the country, and for the disquieting results of literacy tests like PIRLS. If we are really serious about turning these figures around, we have to expand the offer of mother language education significantly. There also have to be some single medium facilities in at least the 12 official languages. Dual medium or parallel medium facilities offer no solution. Internationally, it's been proven that in such facilities, eventually the stronger language will stifle and phase out the weaker of the languages. And in the case of South Africa, the stronger obviously is going to be the internationally rooted English, and the weaker the remaining 11 indigenous languages. I think we've come a long way with the policy framework for tertiary educational facilities. At least there's a recognition of the fact that we need to be more multilingual, but still in practice, we do not see this always happening. And I think that's why we need to create safe spaces where there is a focus on a specific language. Sometimes the argument is heard that a demand for mother language education means a declaration of war against English or against other languages. But of course, this is not the case. With a strong basis for as many years as possible in mother language, children develop the ability to acquire more languages more fluently than when they are exposed to mother language education for a shorter term, or sometimes not even at all. Not only will children with access to mother language education internalize concepts in abstract subjects like maths and sciences more easily in their mother tongue, but they will also become more proficient and fluent in English and in other local and foreign languages. Their ability to articulate arguments in all languages they study will improve, as will their general confidence in class situations and beyond, like in the business world. Internationally, we see that countries with larger offerings of mother language education have higher levels of literacy, lower percentages of unemployment, and therefore higher levels of income and social stability. In recent studies, it's even been found that people who had mother language education run a lower risk of developing health problems and committing suicide. I find this mind-boggling. These are all benefits that we desperately need. Yet officially, the default opinion seems to be from the state side that English-only education will bring us to the same conclusion, an approach which really hasn't worked over the past centuries, never mind in recent decades. If we want the youth of South Africa to have a viable future and for our country to remain internationally competitive, we urgently need to increase the offering of mother language education. Simply putting a child in a school is not the answer. The child has to be in a school where they can develop all round from the basis of mother language. We see a lot of examples of the opposite. I've mentioned a few, but because of time constraints, I'm not going to name them. But you really feel afraid for the future of children who are in schools with a 0% pass rate in maths in matric, or who are 16 years old, yet they cannot even read, never mind read with comprehension. And that's all situations that we face in schools that we visit. I think this is why today's discussion is so crucial, and to really broaden access to quality education, and more specifically, mother language education, is not going to be an easy task. I also grant that it won't be cheap, but the alternative is much more expensive and something that all South Africans cannot afford. So I hope today's discussion will lead us to more practical plans to make this a reality in South Africa. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Alana, for that very informative session and also for the statistics that you provided. And yeah, and for starting off that with the statement basically that there's often a perception that a recognition of language rights is a luxury that we cannot afford, and that there's such a high cost to multilingual education. But that in the same breath, it is a fundamental human right, and yeah, it also is necessary for us to have these spaces where in which we can explore, you know, our language, our multilingualism, etc. And that children with access to mother language will actually yes, have so many more opportunities in life, and how it also improves their mental health and general well-being. So I think this is definitely something that we have to talk about further. So what I would be interested in from our participants at the moment is to find out about the practical plans. Then we've heard, you know, what the problems are on the ground at university, preschool, etc. But we want to know what the practical plans are. How are we going to start to close this gap? I'm just wondering in the meantime, Prof, since you didn't do your opening remarks, whether you want to maybe first take the floor and say something before we proceed with the discussion and questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our presenters. I am in a quite difficult situation in that at some stage I may lose power, and the place where I was is load-shedded, and I'm on my way to a place that is hopefully going to help me. But let's just start with the issues that have been put on the table. It seems to me that there's agreement that in an ideal world, everyone has to be provided with an opportunity to learn in a mother tongue language and to socialize in that language. There seems to be an agreement, and the agreement is that that is an opportunity that is extended to everyone. And I want to support that view because it is resonant with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which we are celebrating its 75th anniversary this year. It's also resonant with our own constitution, primarily in terms of the right to equality, the right to education, and the right to human dignity. So I think there are these two amazing starting points where there's common ground around the importance of mother tongue instruction as a cultural embedding facilitator, as an education facilitator. I just want to confirm what the last speaker said. The Department of Education has also confirmed that when learners learn in mother tongue and then move on to the other languages, especially in the early years, they develop better neural pathways and they understand concepts better, and they have a better grounding in any subject they're dealing with, whether it's maths, English, science, technology, etc. And they've been doing an experiment in the Eastern Cape by using Xhosa as a mother tongue instruction. So there seems to be no disagreement amongst us. But in addition to that, Nelson Mandela said, just from the point of view of social cohesion, Nelson Mandela said that if you speak to a man in a language he understands, you speak to his head. If you speak to him in his language, you speak to his heart. And I have seen when the German ambassador presents his speech in 25% Xhosa, and then a little bit of Afrikaans, and then a lot of English, that the hearts are warmed in the room. I've seen when Mayor Papas speaks to people in Zulu, their hearts are warmed. And yet in the broader South Africa, it's weird that there are white people that can't even understand the meaning of sawubona or mono. And that's not accidental, because it comes from a history where the 1909 Constitution deliberately dehumanized the rest of the humans in South Africa and decided that the only languages that mattered in this country were English and Afrikaans. And when I was involved in equity and transformation in the defense, in the Equal Opportunities Board, we started from a footing where the defense, South African National Defense Force used to speak about 2 language groups in the Defense Force. So we all had to put ourselves in a category of whether we were English speaking or Afrikaans speaking, and guess the rest was just grass. And of course, as an Equal Opportunities Board, we explained to them that this is continuing the devaluation, dehumanization of indigenous communities and the communities that came in through indentured labor and slavery. And of course, everyone else who doesn't speak English or Afrikaans, and then they change. So that takes me to the social justice question. I think for me, the social justice question is twofold. Is in what way do we avoid using language in a way that continues cultural hegemony, which in this country was Afrikaans and English, and the two have always battled with each other as if nobody else matters. And of course, in that whole process over the years, English seemed to be winning, although Stellenbosch was one of those institutions established with a clear view to regenerate the Afrikaans language. And we know Stellenbosch was established initially as an English college, but there was a concerted effort from government and from funders to use it as a crucible to support Afrikaans. So, but the question rises around a hegemonious perpetuation, a perpetuation of cultural hegemony in the use of language. The second issue is about a barrier, which works both ways. If you continue to perpetuate the hegemony of these 2 languages, not only do you continue the dehumanization of others, but also it becomes a barrier in that if you're from Zimbabwe, we've heard from students, then you have 2 languages to learn. If you come from Germany, you've got 2 languages to learn.
Hi, Mana. I think we lost Prof.
Thanks, Di. I was just typing here where the prof disappeared. With my Wi-Fi, that's so bad. I'm never sure which is mine and which is the speakers. Okay, let's see if we can get Prof back onto the line. Yeah, I really loved what she says in terms of if you speak to a man or woman in his language, you speak to his heart. I think that that is definitely very true and very apt. And as Prof said, we all agree that multilingualism is necessary, access to language is necessary, etc. So I propose that if there's any questions at this stage, that I'm opening the floor for the discussion. If there's nothing that any of our speakers, any our participants want to specifically ask, I'm going to ask Antoinette to maybe expand a bit on the workshops and yes, the impact of the workshops and what has been found, what are students saying as well. But I'm first opening the floor for questions, colleagues, even if you wanted to engage with each other, as speakers. Dive, you can also then just alert me if you see anybody's hand that I might not be seeing.
Okay.
Yeah, and then maybe I can just add that during the rugby, it seemed that language and the issue around language brought us as South Africans together, at least. And we all spoke as one voice. So that at least is heartening. So I think, Antoinette, I'm then going to maybe hand over to you to talk a bit about the workshops that you've been hosting.
Thank you very much for that, Marna, and also thanks to the other two speakers and also three speakers as well for their contributions. And I think a lot of things resonated with me. I mean, the issue of policy and the disconnect between policy and implementation, but then also our collective responsibility to actually create an environment where that policy can actually come into effect. And I think this is where the workshops come in. And specifically the workshops that we've been hosting for our student leadership, as well as, general student leadership. And quite a number of workshops in April. And we again hosted one on the 11th of September as part of the leadership conference for our newly elected leaders. And I think what we try to do in those workshops is really to make it a very interactive space. So we actually start with our own reflecting on our own linguistic journey. So how do we feel about language? What does our individual language journeys look like? And it's very interesting because, I mean, we've got very diverse groups with different types of languages, often in a group. We then ask the participants to share in small groups. And I think many of the issues mentioned here today as well, I mean, the hegemony of English, being kind of scared to talk your own language, speak your own mother tongue because it's possibly not valued in academic, all of those types of issues emerge. And we actually find a lot of commonality irrespective of our linguistic or cultural backgrounds. So I think that, first of all, is quite a realization. And I think the students really appreciate coming together in terms of sharing their own linguistic journeys. And then we move on to actually linking those to values, because I think at Stellenbosch University, because it is such or has been such a contested area, and as Alana also said, it's been a contested area even in the courts, people are often scared or not really willing to talk about language because they are worried that something might happen to them if they speak about language. And I think that is exactly what we're trying to break down at Stellenbosch University. We want to create those safe and enabling spaces where people can freely speak about language from their own perspectives, linking it to values. And then we also engage with the students around scenarios linked to values. And I must say the overall feedback from the students who've attended these workshops have been very, very positive, because it really creates that space to talk about language in a safe space, and how we link language to our values at the university. Respect, compassion, all of the values that we value at Stellenbosch University. We've also been having these workshops with lecturers in academic spaces, where again we talk about linguistic journeys, but then also how lecturers in their classrooms, irrespective of the language option chosen, create a space where students feel comfortable to respond in whichever language they feel they want to respond in, as long as they can translate or somebody can translate their contribution. And we're also looking to roll out similar workshops now in the professional academic support services, as well as during the Welcoming Week coming up next year for all the monitors, and a refresher for our leaders in the residence spaces. So I really think, Marna, in short, these workshops are really trying to get this disconnect between policy and what's happening, or potential disconnect between policy and what's happening on the ground level, kind of bridged, and really getting people out of the space of being scared to talk about language for fear of being called out by saying the wrong thing, but rather opening up the space and saying there's no wrong answers. This is your language journey, but we want to connect it up with the values of the university. Thanks, Mona.
Thanks, Antoinette. That was really very informative, and it's heartening to hear that you have such great success with these, like you say, safe spaces. And as I understand it correctly, especially when people then maybe divide into smaller groups to find the commonality and to really talk about how they feel about language and their individual journeys. And I think that brings us, you know, back to when you look at things through an intersectional lens in terms of how to hear other people's voices and their stories. I think that gives us more compassion for each other and a shared type of humanity. So I actually would like our other speakers to maybe comment on this. And then maybe later, if you can also provide input on, do the student leaders then they are responsible for nurturing multilingualism and these spaces, especially within hostels and the spaces where or their platforms, so to speak. And do you find that that is successful? And yes, maybe our other speakers can engage on this. Gugulethu, how do you feel about this? Oh, I see Alana's hand is up. Alana, and then maybe if Gugulethu wants to also respond. Over to you, Alana.
Thanks so much. I spoke to lecturers who work at I think at the University of the Western Cape last week, and they said that in some of their courses, it became obligatory to do a second South African official language. And initially the students grumbled about this and said, but why do I need to learn this language? I'm never going to use it. But the moment when they started working in communities, they suddenly found that so many more doors opened to them, not only professionally, but also socially, because they could address more people in more languages. And I think that's also what I liked about what Dr. Antoinette said about the definition of success, that we have to be in service of society. I think too many parents raise their children to speak English because they want them to have a good career and maybe also international success. And they forget that we have to serve our own communities in South Africa first. And I wonder whether at Stellenbosch you also have similar experiences when introducing a compulsory course in a second language in some of the courses.
I'm wondering if one of our other speakers can comment on that. Antoinette, I'm sorry, I'm now calling on you. Otherwise,
Yes.
I don't know if Prof. David, if he knows as well, if you could maybe answer.
Yeah, I can maybe just quickly say, Mona, I think it's integrated already in our curriculum in terms of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, our MBCHB, also in education, and some of our really professional degrees. Additional languages, whether it be isiXhosa or Afrikaans, are already integrated into the curriculum. So I'm just giving a few examples, but there are that type of integration as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoinette. And I see Prof. Madonsela's hand is up. Prof, over to you.
Right. Sorry, colleagues. I'm hard, so I don't know how much of what I said did you hear, but I'll just jump into questions around how do we comply with the, oh, to what extent do we take some of the principles that come from, in this case, that I cannot pronounce the first name, but I can certainly pronounce the Kansi case. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly. One of the things I think we have to deal with when it comes to language and everything in South Africa is to accept what Professor Bochenpoel suggests is a tension, or a healthy tension, that we have in our Constitution. On the one hand, our Constitution seeks to protect existing rights, including rights that were obtained during the excesses of colonialism and apartheid. But the very same Constitution seeks to provide, in other words, to provide new opportunities to those who were excluded. So how do we strike that balance? And one of the ways for me is to use technology, where maybe you can teach in all of these different languages, but have simultaneous translation. So that's something I have recommended in some of the forums that we've had at Stellenbosch University, that we should consider investing in technology. If you look at the Chinese, they're dominating the world without understanding a word of English, some of them, but they've invested a lot in technology in making sure that there's simultaneous translation. Because I want to agree with Professor David that whilst agreeing with my colleague Elana Bailey as well, Elana Bailey on the importance of mother tongue, and Professor David on the importance of not allowing these languages to decay. Apart from the pragmatism part, not allowing the languages to decay, but we have to create that kind of mixed thought then that addresses all of these seemingly tenuous needs of people. The one being, if you taught in the language of your own understanding, in your first language or mother tongue, as they call it, you're likely to understand things. But also, if you exist in a multilingual society, you're likely to be smarter because it develops more neural pathways for you. But lastly, a society that is multilingual is automatically a society that recognizes the humanity of everyone and opens up real opportunities for people. And which takes me to the Constitutional Court case in Batusta, where Justice Ngobo was very clear that our Constitution is different from other constitutions. It's not there to pretend we're equal. It acknowledges that we are not equal and creates pathways for achieving that equality, not pathways for cementing existing inequalities. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you for that, Prof. So I agree with you, investing in technology, like for instance, simultaneous translation, that is definitely something that I think we can explore. Guguletu, I see your hand is up. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think the other problem is we are often stuck in this thing of saying that we don't have enough resources to actually accommodate for other languages. But I think sometimes it's the small things that we do not focus on that actually push for more inclusivity in terms of languages. So, for instance, what I usually do with some of my friends, the one thing that I love about most African languages, Bantu languages, or Nguni languages, is that they are closely connected. For instance, I have a friend who speaks Swati, I speak Isindebele, and we can have a full-blown conversation here, speaking in Swati, me speaking in Ndebele, and understanding each other. And sometimes I wish the university could just also, hold on to that and actually use it in terms of education. And with isiXhosa, I wish they could have placed more effort in actually ensuring that students are taught in isiXhosa, because some other people who speak isiNdebele or Zulu can get a little bit of this and that, whilst also listening to someone who is speaking in isiXhosa. So I think, yes, resources are important, but it also goes on to the effort that is being placed to celebrate these languages. Because when you look at, yes, we have policies that are saying we celebrate diversity, but we have a few critical engagements where people can engage in other languages. I wish we would have more critical engagements which are centered maybe in isiXhosa. We have a full-blown engagement where people can actually use vernacular, use their African languages without having to rely on English, just to send a message to say we also acknowledge and appreciate those other languages, rather than preaching the gospel of multilingualism. Whilst we continue to have critical engagements, we continue to engage in English and neglecting other languages. I wish we could just, practice what we preach by making sure that, yes, it might start small, but we also ensure that we especially within the academic space, there is need to actually push for the inclusion of other languages. It might not necessarily be a big thing, but we might start by having one or two maybe engagements in vernacular in Zulu or in Xhosa a year. That might, contribute towards change, or it might take us somewhere.
Thanks, Gugulethu. That is a really interesting thought and something that I think we can definitely think about. I see Antoinette is still in the meeting. Antoinette, so something that you can maybe take to the powers that be. I see Prof. David's hand is also up. Antoinette, I know, apologies, Prof. David, before you respond, Antoinette says she must leave at 2 o'clock. Antoinette, thank you very much for joining us. It has really been a wonderful engagement, and yes, I do hope that we can engage further.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, Mana. And Gugulethu, I'll definitely contact you. I would love to hear more of your ideas and creative ideas about how we can move on some of the suggestions you made today as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Antoinette. Okay, Prof. David, over to you.
Can I just say a word to thank Dr. Antoinette? Oh, she's left now. Just to say thank you so much, and my apology for not being there.
Thanks, Prof. Okay, Prof. David.
I just wanted to mention that I couldn't agree more with Gugulethu and her comments. Yeah, that's why in my contribution I highlighted the importance of language attitudes, and she set a very nice example. Yeah. That idea of how Bantu languages are intercomprehensible, and there is a need to work on people's attitudes towards the use of different languages. Yeah, that multilingual mindset that you have underscored in the different interventions. Yeah, I think that the important thing here, I would dare to say, is that, well, university can do a great job, but it's very important to start at earlier stages. So when I talk about language attitudes, it's not only about the Bantu language families, but it's also towards Afrikaans and towards English. So this is something that has to be worked on at the school level, because education has a tremendous impact on people's attitudes. Teachers, classmates, the whole educational system, and this has been clearly proven by research, has a huge impact on students' attitudes. And what we need, if we really want to achieve a multilingual mindset, we have to start from a very early age. So that's why the teacher training and the work carried out by teachers is so important. It is vital. It's a key in this process. If we want to develop a multilingual mindset, this has to start from a very early age, and students need to be taught that all languages have the same value, because otherwise, if we try to make up for that at the university level, it's gonna be too late on most occasions, yeah, in most cases. So this is something that has to start from the very beginning, and it's a key issue in multilingual contexts such as South Africa or my home country. There is a need to work very hard from very early stages on all these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Yes, that definitely resonates with what you have said earlier and with Googleita's suggestion. Prof. Tuli, do you want to still say something?
Thank you, Marna, and again, thank you to the colleagues. I like the idea of teaching everyone in at least one indigenous language at the earliest position. For me, I wanted to respond to Guguletu's point to say, I like the idea of starting small, because it shouldn't be either you do the big things, either you go big or you go broke. You can start small. So that I'm fully in agreement with you, Connie. I wanted, though, to augment your idea about language as an issue of affirming diversity. And I think what is emerging from Professor David, which I also adhere to from the point of social justice, is that it's not a matter of only embracing diversity. It's also a matter of embracing equality. Because it's not accidental that you have white people in South Africa who don't speak a single local language, who can't say more than 2 words in local language. It's because of the value attached to these languages. It's almost like in India, when you have the caste system, you can give gifts upwards, but you can't take things from beneath. If you're upper class, you can't take from the lower class. And I think for me, we have to be honest that the language issue in South Africa is an issue of cultural hegemony. That Black people, as indigenous Africans, Coloureds, and Indians, are a numerical majority in post-apartheid, well, in current South Africa. And I'm going to avoid calling it post-apartheid South Africa. But Blacks as a category with 3 subgroups are a numerical majority, but they remain a cultural minority, a social minority, and an economic minority. And that but in de jure, we are equal, but de facto, we still need to go a long way. And I think Gugu then is saying, we don't have to go the full Monty, let it go. We can take these baby steps. And I agree with that. In some of the medical schools, it's compulsory for somebody to learn the local language that is dominant in their area. Lawyers work with everyone. I think the law school too should adopt a policy where everyone has to learn at least some basics of Xhosa if you're at Stellenbosch University. And if you're in Gauteng, maybe Sotho, I don't know what's the main language in Sotho. If you're in KZN, it should be Zulu. And I think the University of KZN is moving along those lines. But we can't superimpose this on people. We need to have conversations with people about enlarged loyalty. But people, it's okay for them to be loyal to themselves and to be loyal to people like themselves. But as Richard Rorty says, a diverse society that is grounded on equality requires people to have enlarged loyalty, where you have loyalty to the whole group. For me, I talk about that as being having a superior level of justice consciousness, not just justice for you, not just justice for people like you, but justice for all, and understanding ultimately that it's all about justice, and all of us have a role in either enforcing injustice or moving the needle on justice, particularly social justice. Thank you.
Marna?
We seem to have lost Marna. I don't know, Marna, if she was going to ask our speakers to give closing statements. We're at 9 past, which means we're already 9 minutes over. But perhaps just closing statements from the colleagues. I've already sort of given my closing statements, so I won't have anything else to say.
Marna has lost connectivity.
Professor Lasabasta. Prof. David, do you want to have your closing statement?
Yes, I could. I could make a final comment. I would say that multilingualism is a wonderful objective, that it's the objective should be the objective of societies all over the world, because it allows us to get to know the other. Yeah, the other communities and those that live.
Have we lost Prof. David?
No, I'm still here. So I think that the objective could be, and this would be a very nice aim, to develop knowledge in not only in English or Afrikaans or English or CSJ or any other pair of languages, but to try to foster trilingualism, yeah, to try to reach that knowledge of more than 2 languages, because that could really go beyond bilingualism. And this can be achieved, but I totally agree with what has been mentioned, that the best way to reach that objective is to give small steps, and these will clear the path towards that objective, which I believe in nowadays is a must.
Thank you, Prof. David. Prof, if you do you wanna continue or shall I? I'm back for the moment.
Now that you're back, please continue.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Alana, some last words from you, and then from Guguletto, and then Prof. Tuli can have the final word.
Thanks so much. Yes, I agree. We need to take small steps. I think sometimes one gets impatient, but if we look back at where we've come from, I think we already have made good progress on the road to true multilingualism. I like the idea of being trilingual. I think that is a good departure point for all South Africans. And I think the moment when you see that true excellence is achieved in your language, it gives you a lot more confidence, and it also increases the fact that you have more empathy with people who speak other languages, because you don't feel that you're under threat the whole time. And I think that's where a lot of the language issues in South Africa come from, because people didn't have the experience that their languages were respected. They also find it very hard to appreciate other languages. And I think we are making progress on that road, and projects like the Eastern Cape isiXhosa schools are doing a lot to make people aware of the value of languages. But I think each one of us in the circle where we move can do a lot more to be disciples of multilingualism, if I can put it like that. I have a very nice bumper sticker that says, it's easy to cure monolingualism. So I'll send it on to you all if you want to have that as well. Have a nice day, and thank you once again for the opportunity to participate.
Oh, thank you, Alana. That was lovely. You're saying at the end, Gugulethu.
Okay, so overall, I think it's important for us to intentionally and consciously engage with other languages, not just to implement policies and do nothing. It's important for us to continuously, even though it's small things that we do, to continuously work towards attaining a society where there is room for everyone, not just accept everyone having the opportunity to learn, but also the opportunity to get to a place and be able to be themselves and also shine in their own language, in their own mother tongue. And yeah, that's it for me.
Thanks, Gugulethu. Prof, last words before we adjourn.
Thank you. Just to say thank you to you, firstly, Magna, for filling in when we had multiple tech challenges, and to our speakers, Prof. David, Dr. Van der Merwe, Ms. Lana Bailey, Ms. Gugulethu Muzingirana, and everyone who has taken the time to be in this room. We are grateful, and we hope, even though we were so small in this room, that our conversation will not have a small effect. It will add to the building blocks of what SU has been doing on the issue of language, what government is doing, and what the United Nations and various groups in society are doing. Of course, as I said when I started, the idea would be that ultimately everyone is able to learn in their mother tongue. I know in Ireland, they're doing that right now. And they suffer, like Spain, the degradation of the indigenous languages of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And now it's much of a struggle to resuscitate them. So in this regard, I would agree with Lana that ours is not really bad, because many of the languages are still alive, except the Khoi and San languages, which eventually we should get there. So I'm happy to start with the idea of trilingual. But if I may just say something to the people who do language for SU, can we use proper linguists? I've learned that you use students, and I think that the translations doesn't work sometimes. For example, when in Stellenbosch we say forward together, forward together does not translate sonke siya phambili. So sonke siya phambili means we all going forward, which means everyone is going forward in parallel ways. The proper translation would be phambili sisonke, which means phambili intersecting together. So that's just my request. I've expressed that to the transformation unit and to the equality unit, that we should be careful and make sure that we have proper linguists doing these translations, because that too reflects the extent to which we are rupturing the language hegemony of the past. But ultimately, in so rupturing the language hegemony of the past, we should not degrade Afrikaans. We should not degrade English or any language. We should value all of these languages. We should take pride in them as part of the richness of who we are as South Africa. Thank you, dear colleagues. Blessings. And of course, Prof. David is right that we learn languages beyond South Africa as well, such as Swahili in Africa, which we try to at least include in our slide, the one word, which is Asante Sana. So thank you, Danki, Inkosi, Asante Sana. Blessings.